Hello and welcome to round 7 coverage here in PTQ Manchester. As you can see here are the standings after round 6. We only got one of the guys on 18 points, which is Luke Southworth.
Yeah, it's getting a little bit tough at the top. With it being a 128 player event and only 7 rounds Swiss, we might very well see some people having to play the last round in order to
Well, I think you're
get
definitely going to see that with having 2 people on 16 points. You've already got that uneven amount of people potentially getting to the magic 19 points there.
Yeah, Andrew Devine and Richard Parker both IDing the last round with each other.
But we have a pretty, should we say, different matchup for this round.
Yeah, we've got Nick Lote, who is on red-black zombies, which is a fairly, it's 2 real old-school style decks for this standard.
What you should have said is we have Nick Lote, who plays his creatures by the side of his land.
Yep. And we have Adam Breeden, who is on a blue-black zombies build, using a Diagraph Captain as opposed to the burn spells coming out of Nick Lote's deck and the Falcon Wrath Aristocrats.
What do you think he named with that cavern, eh?
I imagine it's not Shapeshifter.
So here we have a land on the right, creatures on the left approach.
Does that annoy you more than lands in front, creatures behind? Or?
I think for anyone who suffers from OCD, they'd be wanting to find out Nick Lote's address right about now. Send him some nasty letters.
And anyone who's a Birmingham City fan as well, with Nick proudly displaying his Aston Villa colours there. We've got Butcher Ghoul from Adam Breeden then, 1-1 Undying for 2. Not really the most impressive creature in the world, but zombies generally doesn't pack the most impressive creatures in the world. It's another
Yeah, if
all
you're
about
playing
synergy.
zombies, you pretty much... You look at all the zombies and go, well, I guess I just have to play all of these, because
Yeah.
they're zombies.
For a long time in Standard, zombies struggled for a 2-drop in its list. Some builds played Knight of Infamy, but even before that we've seen some pretty ropey cards being played at 2 just for the fact that they needed something at 2.
Yeah, in the end they just ended up throwing zombies at people in the 2-drop.
Yep. Of course, Blood Artist is the other 2-drop that the zombies deck likes to have. So Nick having a bit of a think here. Be very surprised if he doesn't have another play. And 1-1 Extort Monster. That's one that we don't really see a lot of out of zombie decks. Interesting decision. I mean, I suppose it works decently with Gravecrawler. Counts as another sort of Blood Artist card. I'd like to think there are better creatures than that could be in a zombie deck, but Nick takes advantage of the Extort there and just drains Adam for 1. So Adam now with his 2-2 on D, and we'll see what he can come up with this turn. Usually around 3 is the time when messengers start flying.
But they've both pretty much got the same game plan here, just carry on drawing cards and playing everything out.
Yeah,
There's really very little in the way of tricks as far as zombie decks are concerned.
The tricks that go on in these decks are generally they generally resolve around Blood Artist activations. That's generally where you're going to see the sort of play skill and timing of the matchup work out. But aside from that, yes, you are correct. There's very little in the way of stone cold interactivity going on. The only interesting thing we've seen so far really was the fact that Adam decided to use a Tragic Slip turn 1 on a Gravecrawler, which isn't really the most optimal use of a Tragic Slip I've ever seen, but maybe he was just looking to stem the beats early on, just try and preserve his life total a little.
Nick certainly seems to have the upper hand right at the start of this game.
Yeah. Mentioned it early on, and that's the Knight of Infamy that's just come down there for Nick Lote. That's exalted, so it's given the Diagraph Ghoul that's attacking there a bit of a boost, making it 3-3. So now there's no real profitable block that Adam can make. I think he's just going to take 3 here. I don't really see any I don't really see any play being any other play being good, to tell you the truth. He's thinking an awful lot about this attack.
It's funny how people do tend to take an awful lot of time over what looks like quite a trivial decision.
I mean, it just seems to me, what decisions do either player have at this point? It's like Nick can't have a decision because he's not got any mana open. And again, unless Adam's going to cast a really bad tragic slip during combat, he doesn't have much of a decision to make there either. It's like blocking just so you can drain your opponent for one seems really bad. In fact, here comes Tragic Slip from Adam, and he's going to get rid of that Knight of Infamy.
Is that really a problem for that deck?
It's going to be annoying, I would say, just because it allows Nick to attack with one guy that will generally make it too big to, and it'll generally make that one guy too big to block. And of course, multiple Knights of Infamy just starts causing really big problems. And Adam, I think, is more than likely in a situation where he'd like to stay on D for a little bit until he can land something like Diagraph Captain. First Geralf's Messenger of the matchup, probably not the last. And that's really one of the key cards in this matchup. Bigger than everything else, and also the drain effect. And combined with Blood Artist, it's going to be a major source of life swing for Adam. Neither player with a sack outlet though yet. And, Nick thinking about his attack, and he's just going to send the Gravecrawler in. Again, I think Adam's going to be just happy to take two here and just see what Nick has available for him.
This can't go on for much longer. At some point he has to start blocking because the Blood Artist can very quickly end a game.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Adam's got the Blood Artist advantage at this point means that he can afford to wait a little bit. And that's Rakdos Cackler with Extort from Nick. And with his one card in hand, passes the turn back. Imagine that last card in hand is either a land or it's a kill spell of some description, because there's not much that Nick wouldn't have cast there if it was another creature. So that's Victim of Night from Adam, and he's going to kill the little 1/1 Extort guy. He's obviously fed up with what that thing's been doing.
Certainly had a little bit of a life swing off it.
Yep. And there is Bloodthrone Vampire. So that means that Adam now does have a sacrifice outlet. So he's swung the game back into his, definitely back into his favour at this point, I believe. He's the one with the sack outlet, and he's the one with the Undying guys and the Blood Artist. So he's got pretty much everything going for him at this point. Oh, Blood Artist of his own from Nick there.
That's certainly the card he wants to be seeing at this point.
Yep. And Nick again with that one card in hand that's pretty much guaranteed to either be a removal spell or a land. Giving it a good read. I think what we're probably going to see here is the I mean, we could see Vampire and Messenger block, and then a bit of sacrifice, chicanery. It really depends what Adam wants to gain out of this situation. Yep, double blocks, and I imagine before damage he's going to sacrifice the Messenger to the Vampire, giving the Vampire +2/+2. Both Blood Artist triggers are going to cancel each other out here, fortunately, but Messenger comes back and deals 2 to Nick, and is now more importantly a 4/3. and Nick loses his Rakdos Cackler. So is that card in your hand anything good, Nick? He just says go, so I think it's pretty much obvious that that's a land that's sitting in Nick's hand here, because if it was a tragic slip I think we'd have seen the last of that messenger or the blood artist by now. So oof, nice. Another messenger from Adam. I think we're going to see him crashing in with both the messenger. He might come in with the vampire as well.
And indeed, he chooses to do that. Generally, when you're ahead in a game of Magic, you want to be pressing it as much as possible.
He sacrifices messenger to the vampire, making it a little bit bigger, and he's going to deal 7 to Nick, so he's going to put him down to 4. I think we're getting the I have effects on your upkeep. During your upkeep. Yeah, and what Adam's doing here is he's sacrificing creatures, and because Nick is now the active player, his Blood Artist trigger is going to resolve last. And so before Nick's Blood Artist trigger resolves, he's going to sacrifice another creature and literally just chain down his creatures. So Nick will die having 4 Blood Artist triggers on the stack.
So here you can see Adam, he's just letting his own triggers resolve. Nick loses the 4 life and we go on to game 2.